It's going. All right, we are live. Thank you, everyone, for joining us once again for Accuracy in America. I'm Don Irvine, and I'm joined by Brian McNicoll in what part of Louisiana?
Well, we're some part of Louisiana. Hello, deplorables, dregs, despicables, chumps, and dog-faced pony soldiers.
Hey, you expecting some Antifa people to...
It's funny too, because like everybody in our neighborhood, like it was this big discussion thing that we left. They all watched us carry our suitcases out. So if there's anything in my house when I get home, it'll be great.
Well, we're glad that you're safe and you've got some family around you. That's great. We're going to see a lot of people traveling this week, despite the COVID restrictions and whatnot, but not going to be quite like Thanksgiving's past for many, many reasons for many people.
Right.
And all of that. And we'll talk a little bit about that maybe if we got some time at the end of the show, things like that.
Yeah, because there's still a lot to be thankful for.
Oh yeah, we do. We absolutely have plenty to be thankful for. I will never say that is not the case. All right, we'll go ahead and just dive into the news. So the Biden transition has now begun. President Trump.
Well, the GSA has provided them a little office space.
Right.
But really,
they're releasing the money.
Huh?
They're releasing.
Yeah, some money. Not all of it, but just a small tranche to get started. And they are like in Vegas, they're not paying the bets. If you bet on Biden, you can't cash your check because they're not satisfied that he will win. I'm not satisfied that he will win either. I think that
you're definitely hardcore on this.
Well, here's the thing about it. It's like, what has changed since the last time we talked? Almost all of it favors Trump, right? You had 3 states certify, which looks like a big step. But in all 3 of those states, the legislatures are saying, we're going to look this over and perhaps require additional steps before we certify it. And it's the legislatures who actually certify it. Basically, you've had the people who run elections say, hey, we're done counting votes, right? And so now it moves to a step where it gets some scrutiny. And, there's 2 big things of scrutiny today. One is, Rudy and Jenna Ellis and the official Trump legal team will be in court in Pennsylvania, in the Middle District of Pennsylvania, arguing that the state Supreme Court used powers it does not have to change election law in Pennsylvania, and that the things that resulted from those changes should be thrown out. And also today, supposedly in Georgia, according to Linwood and the other, Sidney Powell, there will be a lawsuit filed stating out all the facts of, how Dominion voting systems and these people change votes. And how ballots were produced to balance the books. So I don't think that I think that Vegas and a lot of other people are waiting to see what they have before they go final on this thing. And it may be that they don't go final on this, that it goes on for a lot longer. So it is still in play. It doesn't seem in play to some people, but it is. And I think that I don't know if you saw this yesterday. Media Research Center. Did you see this? They had a poll, and it was like they asked people, did you know about Hunter Biden's laptop? Did you know there was child porn? Did you know that they were linked to China? Did you know about 10% for the big guy and all this kind of stuff? And a big bunch of Democrats did not. Like 40, 50% of the Democrats had not heard of these stories. And 9% of Biden's voters said they would have voted for Trump if they had known about various aspects of this. So, and like the polling, it's way up in the 90% of Republicans saying that this was not done fairly and needs to be further looked at. So I am, I am hardcore up on it, as you say, but I am not the only one.
No, you're not. You're not alone by any stretch of imagination, though. Look, for me, after that Giuliani, Sidney Powell, Ellis press conference last week, I thought, this is not going to go all that well. That was, to me, that was somewhat of a train wreck there. and to see the distancing between the Trump legal team and Sidney Powell and all these things. I mean, if they come up with facts, that's fine, because I've said you got to count every vote. The state of Maryland told me my ballot finally got counted. Thank goodness for that. Not that it makes a big difference, but I'm
glad the Trump total from 7 to 8.
Yeah, right.
I mean, when yours gets counted.
Yeah,
the other guys have already called you.
The percentages just go boom. But I'm waiting for facts, and we definitely are seeing there's still hedging going on. I mean, there is something to be said as to why we aren't seeing more state certifications on the one hand at this stage of the game. We are heading right into here to the holidays, so I'm not sure how much action is going to occur here in the next few days. We may not see much happening again until really Monday, or at least from business day standpoint. But the time, but the clock is obviously, we've talked about this. The clock is continuing to tick along there. They
right.
do have a very, to me, they have a very narrow path with very little time to make their case to try to change this. In the meantime, as I said, I'll rephrase that or couch that in terms of the transition.
See if you can get 4 words in this time.
Biden is putting the transition forward, whether or not anybody else, whether or not the Republicans are going along with that. I mean, I think, to that extent, the GSA did free up some money and free up some space. And so I think, you correct me, I think they're going to give the Biden team some intel briefings now or something to that effect.
That wasn't my understanding.
I thought that was something that had that they were talking about, that they were going to give them some, not the complete thing yet on this. So there's we still are kind of in this pattern of, on the one hand, the Biden team needs to prepare. I'll say this, if and when they are, that's official for them, so they can actually have something in force. They can't really wait till December 14th and then start to put this together. I mean, I think they need to really, so having these people, up and ready to go, I don't really have a problem with this, because, my feeling is that I think it's inevitable, and I hold out, slim chance that something will happen that will change the dynamic on this. But, I don't know. I mean, I really don't know what's going to happen. I don't have the crystal ball. I'm not a lawyer. I don't know.
I don't either. And because people ask me about this a lot, and I want to say, there's a lot of, people say, oh, there's no evidence. A lot of fraud has been proven in this election. A lot of votes have been flipped from Biden back to Trump because of wrongdoing found in the various voting systems of the various states. I think there's 6 states now that have flipped some votes, at least a few votes, back to Trump from Biden. No votes have flipped the other way, right? So all the cheating went in one direction. The argument, the original argument, there was no fraud, cleanest election ever. Then there was not all that much fraud, not widespread. Now I don't think you can prove it's not enough to change the election. Now I don't think you can prove it's enough to change the election. And, I think you'll run out of time first, which, they have decreasing confidence in their own position here, right, in a lot of ways. So, that's one thing to look at. But as you say, the clock is running. So if you are going to do this, we're not going to go to December 20th and flip this, right? There's going to have to be some strong movement toward flipping it before the middle of December, right? A state or two saying yes, other states saying, look, considering what happened in state X, we now have to look at what happened here, and, essentially starting the process and at least getting yourself, some stall time for states to look at this, right? The none of what has happened in court to this point really matters all that much going forward, because it's what Rudy is arguing in Pennsylvania, which is that judges can't change state law, and what Linwood and Sidney Powell are arguing in Georgia, which is that a computer system was able to manipulate votes, and then they went and backfilled the votes with phony ballots and so forth. Those are the two things. challenging this and that county or whatever. That was never going to be the strategy that overcame this, and it's not now. But, Trump supporters should know that the clock is running, and that the timeline, the time horizon for presenting facts that could flip this election is pretty short, because it's the day you present the evidence, it's not going to flip, right? Then people are going to say, oh, that's not true, we can prove 5 other explanations. Okay, let's see your proof. Oh, you don't have proof. Okay, well, your first 3 are thrown out, your 4th one, your 5th one's terrible. Okay, so I mean, it's going to take time to work through all that, and that clock has to start here pretty soon.
Yeah, I mean, we get to Monday, which, I mean, there may be some courts that may be doing something on Friday, but generally, things.
There are courts. I mean, there are things expected to happen in court on Friday.
Yeah,
I mean, this is a presidential election. It's a short holiday.
Yeah, but but once again, because the time continues to get shorter and shorter. So I mean, if they really have to have, to me, they've really got to have something really solid, by early next week, because of the timeline is just getting so doggone short for them. But let me ask you this though, because I have no doubt that there were problems with this election. I mean, if you're talking about 150 plus million votes being cast by mail, early voting, in person on election day, that's a massive amount of votes. County election boards, state, everybody's got different rules and regulations about what counts or what doesn't count and how you can vote and all this kind of thing. So that was definitely kind of a setup for, for things going on there. I mean, you talked last week about Canada, and how their systems is much better. Of course, they are a very small country compared to ours. But, what is this saying about, our elections, going forward? I mean, what kind of things are we going to be looking towards in 2022 and 2024? I mean, are we going to be able to resolve some of these issues in terms of the problems that we found? Is this enough of a timeline? I don't know. I really don't know what the answer is. As long as we give the states and the counties the rights to go and set the rules, I just think we with all these myriad of rules, we're always going to have some kind of problem.
Well, they tried to impose a mail-in ballot system, in places where it had never been done before. And it's done in I think there's 8 states that have been doing it for a while now. And so they know who at each house should receive a ballot, and, they know what they're doing. And it's not a big breeder for corruption. There has been some corruption with it. Colorado, Washington, Oregon have all had cases of corruption involving mail-in ballots. But in this case, you're talking about some traditionally corrupt places, such as, Michigan with Detroit, Pennsylvania with Philly, Wisconsin with Milwaukee, where, I think in Wisconsin, if you are confined by illness, you can, that's an excuse to get an absentee ballot, right? The most they had ever done before this for an election for absentee ballots was 9,200 votes statewide. This year it was 160,000, like 7-8 times the margin between Biden and Trump. Now, you're going to get some more because of COVID, but I mean, that's ridiculous, right? You have in Georgia, you have 92,000 ballots marked only for Biden, right? The difference in the election, 17,000 that didn't vote. You had 2, very close, emotional Senate races on every ballot in Georgia, and a congressional race on every ballot in Georgia. And you have 92,000 votes compared to like 2,100 for Trump, where they only voted for the president and didn't vote in any down ballot election. There's a few people are going to do that. I think you say, how many people would do that normally? 2,100. The 2,100 for Trump kind of shows you where that would fall, right? So now you have, these are big irregularities that are, screaming red light signs for fraud that, we need to take the time to find out if that's, to what extent it is fraudulent. Because if you don't, this will be every election from now on, right? If you don't show that you're going to stop it, you'll be putting up with it from now on. So, there's a big task. And as you say, it's not a lot of time to do it.
Yeah, and the thing here is just that I don't want, I never want to really get into people and their conspiracies, and we got a gazillion of them with this election now and the results and stuff like that. But COVID, to me, did give the Democrats in particular perfect cover to do things. How many more votes were you going to get by absentee ballot? I mean, I didn't look at the Maryland results and things like that. I popped my ballot in at the Board of Elections, in Montgomery County, not trusting it to the mail. I figured that was the next best thing to standing in line and waiting in person to go vote. But and the way their systems, ran and everything like that. You mentioned, there are states that have done, mail-in voting, and they seem to be pretty well. But I would believe that, when they launched those programs, they launched them, in off-election years with smaller test cases, so they can kind of run through and see what problems they get. If you're used to getting 10,000 or 20,000 absentee ballots, and then all of a sudden you get 5, 6, 7 times that, your system is now completely overwhelmed. And I think that, this is where you're going to run into a lot of problems. Plus, just a huge volume. We saw problems with the Postal Service trying to, you put your ballot into the mail. All bets are off to me. It's like, how do you really know where that thing is and where it's going to go? I mean, they found ballots still sitting around in post offices. The post office had problems processing. There's just this litany of issues, with this election going on. But in the end, say Biden, the states certify for Biden, we move on with that. He gets inaugurated in January. What happens to the Stop the Steal movement and all the people that are behind Trump? Do they continue to move? Are they going to be willing to accept this, or are they going to be continuing to fight and try to litigate this somehow? I don't want our side to come off as looking like Hillary Clinton, the people who never got over the 2016 results.
Dead enders. I hear you, but it'll depend on. A lot of it depends on what happens today. What's in Sidney Powell's lawsuit in Georgia. What do they allege? What can they prove out of that? She said she has the guy who can show how and when and where votes were changed and the server on which they were changed. So she has all that. That's a pretty, that's a lot of pretty strong evidence that, they would have a hard time overcoming. They'd have a hard time ignoring without going back and, and looking back at those things. So, I don't know, I don't think that we are in half-baked conspiracy theory area here. I think we are in, wait and see what this lady has theory right now.
Yeah, no, I'm not saying that we're going to. I just want to make everybody aware of that. There's a. You want a conspiracy theory? Very easy to find one out there right now.
Right, but the other thing is like we're the law and order people, right? When or if it becomes apparent that Trump did not win, we're all going to expect Trump to do what people do when they lose, and that is, effectuate the transition to the next administration, leave office on January 20th, wish your successor some, success, because they're doing a hard job that, you want done well, or you wouldn't have been devoted your life to doing it for the last decade. Right. So, I think that's what will happen. I think if Trump becomes satisfied that the votes aren't there to flip it, then that's what will happen to him. I get told by a lot of people, oh, that'll never happen. He'll never be graceful about this, but he will. When he has been graceful in defeat about stuff before. And I think if that happens, then, he will do it. And I think if he does it, it signals to all the people behind him to do it, to drop it, drop the objections and get behind it. There's going to be dead enders in any group. There's, you look at Twitter, it's everything from, if he has it, we're backing him all the way. But if he doesn't have it, we're going to support, we're going to say, let's move on to, I will never forgive them for what they did, X, Y, Z. There's nothing you can do about that. They have the, they're dealing with the same thing on the other side. This, left versus far left pull, of people that are trying to, get into the government, keep out of the government. There's a movement across on the other side to keep certain people out because they have, been too moderate or whatnot in the past. So I mean, there's a lot going on both sides of this, and there's a lot of uncertainty because he cannot yet prove that he should be president. So Biden's kind of stuck too. So it'll be interesting to see, but I think we'll learn a lot more when by this time tomorrow we'll know a lot more.
Yeah, and to me, the media would almost like nothing better for Trump to continue along this path and to not concede, to be bitter or whatever, because they've already built that expectation in by their reporting about how he won't do these things. So it would give him another chance to go back and attack him and pillory him some more for that. So if he actually does what he should be doing, and it's for America. It's not for him. It's not for Joe Biden or Kamala Harris. It would be for the betterment of America, for the good of America. We move on and do this if you're now fully convinced that this is going to be the case, that that Biden has the votes and it's all certified, it's all done for, or whatever. It just seems that the media reports I see are they're kind of waiting for everything to be kind of said and done, and for Trump still to not move forward with this.
Right. But I mean, you think about, the things in that survey are stunning. You should go look that up, the MRC thing, so they had almost half of them didn't know about the laptop. So when you think about, October 28th, the FBI confirms on the record that they're investigating one of the candidates for president, and not a single MSM organization reports on that. How can you not say the FBI says they're investigating, right? I mean, there's parts of this story with Hunter and so forth. You can say, okay, this looks speculative and, sounds kind of wild, and I'm not going to bother to, go through his laptop contents until someone makes me. I'm just going to say, the the Republicans are cooking up last ditch stuff, smears, right? You can do that. That's lazy reporting, and that's what they do all the time. And so that's what they do. But when, the chief law enforcement agency in the country says they're investigating one of the candidates a week before the election for, bribes from foreign governments, this would go directly to his ability to do the job, that he's now trying to get to do. Right. And you don't report it at all. You don't even just confirm that it happened. Then that they have kind of erased themselves as credible sources, even on the left. You can't even trust them to be reliable lefties anymore.
Yeah, and look, I mean, I definitely think that the whole Hunter Biden and the laptop thing, I mean, that did not get the attention it needed to get, deserved to get. And I think had really honest reporting been done on this, I think there would have been votes that could have been swayed. I mean, but if Joe Biden takes over as president, is that the end of it? Will that all be finally killed and buried?
Well, I mean, if the Republicans maintain control of the Senate, no, it won't, right? Obviously, they're going to look into this, and there'll be a report, and it will allege some illegal activities that they'll have to just figure out how they want to address. He won't get impeached, obviously, but it's possible prosecutors could go after him, right? There is no rule against charging a sitting president, especially with crimes like that. So, it won't be over. That all that stuff is not going to go away, right? We're not going to forget about it, and we need to know if he did it. Right. Now he did. He took the George H.W. Bush approach, and he named a vice president that is basically president insurance, right? No one wants to get to her, so you knock him out. That's what happens. So.
I like that, president insurance. Okay, I got to remember that for the future. But it really is true. All right, so I do, I've had this thing on the agenda for a while, but now we've actually got people that Biden has nominated or set forth. We had this big press conference with all these people yesterday, talking about their being nominated to these various positions. I kind of wanted to get your thoughts on this, particularly start off with John Kerry as this this climate czar. I know how interested you've been on climate change and these issues over the years, but I'm like, you got to be kidding me.
That is, and the Bush and the Trump administration is rushing to get leases doled out in the Arctic National Wildlife Reserve. We're trying to get all the drilling going before, they take over, if they take over. So I mean, it's being worked on both ends. But that first of all, one of the things I loved about Trump was that he got rid of the czars. Right? What is the power of the czar? Where does the czar get his power? By what right does he, what does he invoke as his charge for negotiating? Does he represent the president? Is what he says, does it mean anything? Can Congress, can he count on Congress to do what he's promising people and so forth? So we had, Obama had all these czars running around, and Trump is largely done away with that practice. So first of all, the idea that there's a czar. Second of all, John Kerry is one of the single least educated, most wrong-headed people on this issue on the planet. Really, there's not really very many people who are wronger about global warming than John Kerry. Right? He's been wrong about every single thing he said about it. He was all over the Gore predictions, by which New York should have been at the bottom of the sea 20 years ago now. It's 2000, right? Right. New York was going to be at the bottom of the sea. Miami was going to go under in 2015. We were not going to have any more snow in the country after 2008, right? He signed up for all that stuff. Every single bit of fear mongering that on climate that has ever gone down the pipe, Kerry has latched hold to. He could not be a worse pick for the job. The only thing about it is, I believe that people elsewhere have picked up on the fact that he's not taken seriously here. So negotiating with him, making big promises and deals with him is kind of a waste of your time, because, Congress does not follow along with what John Kerry says, and not many people do other than that. So I think that was
what is Kerry's expertise in this regard? It didn't seem to be something that this was in his wheelhouse.
Well, I guess they're going to say Secretary of State. They want him in on. They're treating this as a defense thing. They call it a national security issue. So, like, he's part of. They're going to make him part of the Joint Chiefs of Staff too. So, I mean, that's crazy what they're doing. And the case for it being a big national security risk is as flimsy as I've ever heard. I've heard the guy who makes the case, the guy who's in charge of military preparedness for global warming. His name is General Gunn, and which is a great name for a military. But I mean, he was just doing what he's told, and he's done yeoman's work at like preparing us for seaside things where the ground will shift and so forth. But the case that like this is a big national security imperative is simply not there.
All right. So what are your thoughts about some of the other people that have been nominated, Blinken and these other people?
Well, Blinken is implicated in the Hunter Biden stuff, right? He could end up being impeached himself. Besides, we have the best Secretary of State maybe ever right now. So, it's hard to imagine anybody holding a candle to Mike Pompeo. The National Security Director is the guy who signed off on Hillary going to Russia and getting dirt on Trump that became the Mueller case. He's the guy who thought that was a good idea. So that's what these are reckless people. And if you want to give them some office space and little GSA money to do their little talks and whatnot, okay, whatever. But these people cannot be getting national security briefings. They are threats to our national security and must be treated. So, and that's everyone involved in the operation, right up to Biden himself.
Yeah, I mean, and I guess with that other pick too, I mean, I guess, DACA will probably be, I mean, it's going to thrive, I guess, under Biden and now, right?
Well, I mean, people say that, and he has a different view on it than Trump does, although not as different as you might think. But I mean, DACA is a closed set, as I understand it. I don't think anybody else could say, hey, I'm a DACA, right? Because there was only a certain group of people covered under that. It's not like there's more people pouring into the DACA system all the time. It's kind of an already defined group. And if he wants to, Trump was willing to let all the DACA people stay, let the 11 million people already here that aren't DACA stay, in exchange for tough controls at the border. So, other than the tough controls at the border part, Biden's views on this are not a lot different from Trump's.
Yeah, I mean, what are you expecting on the border issue at this point? I mean, they're not going to further, the build the wall thing, would they?
No, they'll see. He said he would stop building the wall on day one. So, they've almost got 500 of the 700 relevant miles built too. So, and it's a tremendous help to national security, to curbing drug traffic, to controlling who gets in and out of the country. That's a big issue. Like, who all can get in, and are we flooded with low wage, low potential, basically people, coming in of their own volition, or do we have national borders?
There was, I think Biden was interviewed and talked about, the question was asked about, is this Obama 3.0, and he's denied that. But hasn't he? I mean, right now what we're seeing is a lot of Obama era people that are, he's planning to put in his administration, and this is just the tip of the iceberg right now, I think.
Yeah, and they're trying to stay away from the demand justice people and so forth, and keep it to a crowd that the rest of America does not become alarmed by, right? I think, and it'll be the ideologues will be fit in at lower levels. They'll have a chance to advance as the administration moves along, and people leave for various reasons and so forth. But yeah, he's looking for old hands, and that's who he knows. That's who he's comfortable with. That's who was part of it when he was doing it. So it's not surprised to see him back.
Do you expect to see Susan Rice in this administration?
Nope. I think they've made pretty clear to Biden that she's not confirmable.
Yeah, and that's part of the thing too. Isn't Biden at least looking at this with some kind of political calculus as to if the Republicans do maintain control of the Senate, he needs to look at confirmable appointees.
Right. I think that's part of why you're seeing some of these, so-called establishment picks, is because he wants people that it's going to be hard for them to make a lot of trouble for him in the confirmation process, right? Janet Yellen at Treasury, you may not like Janet Yellen's monetary policy and so forth, but I mean, she was on the Federal Reserve. She's not some kind of wild-eyed crank, right? They're going to have to vote to confirm her.
Right, and the Federal Reserve is supposed to, not be political. So she's now in a much more political position, obviously, than it was before. So it'll be interesting to see how she fares in this type of position. You mentioned establishment, which is definitely something that is here. Is that we're definitely seeing a reestablishment of the establishment, which is something that Trump, I think, worked very hard to basically, pick apart. And what's your outlook for the government over the next 4 years? I mean, how different is this going to be after we've had 4 years of Trump?
Well, if it goes through,
right,
which we do not know, I think you'll have a problem by 2022 holding the House, because there are, they almost lost it. That's another thing. It's like when you start thinking about, how did Trump lose? Okay, he had 60 million votes in 2016. He has about 74 million and counting now, right? And he improved by almost a quarter, right? There were 27 races that Larry Sabato rated as toss-ups, right, in the House. 27 toss-up races. Republicans won 27 of those races, right? The idea, like, he gets 25% more votes, and they win every toss-up race. There's 11 new pro-life Republican women in the House, right? And yet he lost badly in the presidential. I mean, every other thing that was measured accurately in voting this year pointed to a Trump-led surge. So not just Trump winning, but Trump having large, wide coattails. And it's like everything, all of that happened except Trump winning. I mean, that, you got to stop and think. It just doesn't fit. So, I mean, I think that, when you say, proven to the Trump supporters' satisfaction, what about proven to the, the common sense, satisfaction of common sense, right? I mean, it's obvious. Like there were, Trump, Biden had the little circles at his thing, and there were 15 people at his rallies, and Trump was drawing 60,000 in cow fields out in the country in Pennsylvania. That there was an imbalance in enthusiasm for this, and so now that, I mean, you're talking about not close, but a thumping by Biden. It just kind of doesn't make sense. So, he gets in, he's going to be, no matter how this shakes out, he's going to be somewhat wounded by that, somewhat limited by that, right? The idea that like the country suspects that you didn't get here by legal means and that you don't really have the will of the people behind you. So that does change like how we will be governed and what kind of deals he might seek to make. It looks like he wants to be, there's some flashpoint issues that he will address real quickly, but it looks like he wants to be a caretaker more than a revolutionary in the office, right? He doesn't want to, he thinks the country is tired of upheaval. And so he's going to try to bring an end to upheaval to, to answer the question. I think that's what he's looking at himself as, a sort of a peacemaker.
Yeah, I mean, it is interesting. I mean, I think this will be, something that will be analyzed for a long time in terms of, how the Republicans were managed to make such huge gains in the House, and still not win the presidency. And I did see a report this morning that, on Ilhan Omar, that, she well underperformed Biden in Minnesota, that. So we have a lot of interesting, wrinkles in this election that have to be kind of scrutinized and looked at. But, when you're talking about Biden, I mean, one of the things that gets me is just like, I'm going to bring America back. Okay. It's like, bring America back from what exactly? What exactly is that? I mean, for me, what are we bringing us back from? I mean, I've been pretty darn happy in general over the last 4 years. I thought America was doing pretty well.
Stock market hit 30,000 yesterday.
Yeah.
It was 19 when Trump took over. That was the record, and now it's 30. It closed above 30, right?
Right. It closed above 30 for the first time ever.
So I mean, that's a tremendous thing. We will have plentiful vaccinations in 2 months, right? Enough where everybody who really needs one can get one in 2 months. Right? Vaccination that's normally a 5-year process. We've gotten it done in less than a year. The warp speed approach worked, like empowering those guys, giving them the resources they needed to attack this as hard and fast as they could and work together and so forth has worked. You have multiple possibilities for vaccines now, right? You have 4 of them demonstrate efficacy of 90% or more. The economy has never been in better shape. The V shape is taking shape. You're back to, I guess, Florida is down below 6% employment, Florida and Texas, right? You're heading back down toward full employment there. The only thing keeping it is restrictions and so forth. So, the places who have closed up and, cowered in their rooms have done a lot worse than the ones who have done it like Trump said. So, economy's coming back. We're out of dumb wars and we're getting out of other dumb wars. I think most of us, all across the political spectrum talked about, why do we fight over these, rubble in the desert? Why are we there? Why are we losing, our soldiers in these wars that the situations in these wars never really change. They don't threaten us. They don't involve us. What are we doing there? Right. And, we finally got, the Republican Party situated to, make the right moves there instead of war, defense all the time. We got them to say, let's be very big and agile and powerful in defense, and let's see how little we can use it. Right. And we've also let these conflicts be solved by the people involved. It didn't have this heavy hand of America. That's one thing you said, Kerry. Kerry was like, we've made all these deals in the Middle East, right? And now the Middle East is making all these deals amongst themselves. And Kerry's like, no, no, no. You remember that little clip? No, 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 no. We cannot have it unless the Palestinians agree. The most important thing that Trump did to make all this move, he did two things. One is he said, you settle it yourself. And the other one is he said, forget what the Palestinians want. His opening gambit in this was to offer the Palestinians a better deal than they had at Oslo. And when they turn it down, as they always do, because they can't recognize Israel's right to exist, right? Then he said, okay, we're moving on. We tried. We're moving on from the Palestinians. We're going to something else, right? Which opened the gates for all kinds of stuff. The Saudis and the Israelis are meeting now, right? Right now, they're meeting. So they're very close to making their own deal. And they will if Biden does not get in and make trouble for it and send Kerry into the middle of it to wreck it.
Yeah, and as you go back, you talk about how the economy is doing in general. I mean, we don't know really what we're going to see because of restrictions that are being put into place, precisely really at the wrong time for the economy. But you're right. I mean, the red states versus the blue states, the ones that have decided to not go backwards, they're doing much better than the states that have been had very restrictive policies and are going to get more restrictive. It's pretty remarkable that when COVID, with all the all the fervor about it, and people were very worried, the market. So I talked about Dow 30,000 potential back in January on this show. We were really close. We were less than 1,000 points away. And then COVID hit and the market went about 19,000 or thereabouts. It's had a 62% rise through yesterday since their nadir. That is remarkable. That it blows people away. Now the stock market, it has been driven by a lot of large tech names and a lot of the other things like that. But it is a forward-looking vehicle. It's trying to predict. Looking at results now, but it's also trying to see what's the next 3, 6, 9, 12 months are going to be like. And when it's going great guns like this is showing that their optimism about the future. President Trump held that very brief press conference to kind of say, hey, the Dow hit 30,000, kind of left the scene after that. Just to remind, that was kind of an interesting thing, kind of plant the flag, said, by the way, don't forget, you may think I've lost, but I did get you to 30,000. So please, don't forget that. But these vaccines, yes, we're getting, more and more reports about the efficacy of vaccines at 90, 95%, seeing reports that, maybe some will come out in December, others maybe in January, very close to some of the timelines that President Trump had said months ago about these things. But, to me, I keep going back to this. The only person I've really heard us say anything from the liberal media side, was Sanjay Gupta from CNN saying, it was remarkable the speed at which this stuff happened. There really isn't anybody in the media. There really aren't any Democrats that want, that are willing to give Trump any credit, because that would blow up their narrative about how badly Trump has handled the COVID crisis. And here we are. We're going to have people getting vaccines, which are not perfect. People have to remember, a vaccine, there will be side effects because everybody's different. People will react differently to a vaccine. Not everybody who gets the flu vaccine is completely immunized, and doesn't mean you won't get it, but it reduces the likelihood by a great degree. So, but and it's not, there were reports that people said with the COVID vaccine, not necessarily the most comfortable thing in the world, but I'd rather have a vaccine than get COVID. So it's not the panacea, but it's a step in the right direction. And President Trump, whether or not he winds up leaving office on January 20th officially or not, he needs to get credit for this. The media has really fallen down on the job on this.
Right. Their narrative has been, and the question that never got asked is, if 200,000 deaths or whatever they say it is, and it's with, not of, and so forth.
Right.
If that's a failure, what number would you have said, okay, Trump did a pretty good job? If it had been 50,000, would you have said, well, Trump did really good, he held this to 50,000? No, you'd have said 50,000, that's totally irresponsible and terrible, right? Any amount over about 10, you were going to condemn him, right? and condemn everything about what he was doing without taking a look at it or thinking about it at all. Trump did this without heavy hand of government. He did it by involving private enterprise, getting companies to shift what they were making to make the stuff we needed at the time, and by, making goods available and let the states compete for them and so forth. And people were like appalled that there was competition in this. But, guess what? The federal government does not own these hospitals. They do not regulate these hospitals. They do not supply these hospitals, right? They don't know what each hospital needs. They don't know the demands on the ground. The people who are on the ground have to make those determinations, right? And sometimes they, as in the case of Governor Cuomo in New York, Governor Murphy in New Jersey, they got those decisions badly, tragically wrong. It's still true to this day that more people died in New York from COVID than in Texas and California combined, right? So, that's not a reflection on Trump. That's what's different about Texas, California, and New York. It's like Cuomo wasn't running Texas and California. That's the difference. So like he got blamed for shortcomings that were not his, and he did not get credit for the things that he really did accomplish.
Yeah, and Cuomo has proven that you can be pretty incompetent about this, but you can get an international Emmy, a Founders Award, for your COVID press briefings.
Right.
I mean, is that insane?
Yeah, and it's like you're getting on there joking about something that you made horrific, tragic, painful mistakes about. Why are you joking about this? Because it doesn't seem like you should be.
Yeah, and what about Gavin Newsom and Cuomo? I mean, didn't Cuomo talk about having Thanksgiving with the family, and now it's backtracked, and then we had the story about Newsom with this big fundraiser event or whatever that was. All the while they're telling everybody you got to stay at home or you can't have more than 10 people or whatever it is, and shutting down businesses, and yet they're just going on as if they're exempt from that.
Those rules don't apply to them. The thing with Newsom, that was egregious. They're crammed into the French Laundry, which is real, one of the best restaurants in the country, or rated as one of the best restaurants in the country, out in California, and nobody's wearing a mask. But I guess you're at a table, you don't wear a table with a mask, but it's this decadent dinner. The bar tab was $15,000, as of drinking the wine and so forth. I'd like to go try that place sometime. I've heard great things about it, but that backfired on him awfully, right? That was now he's trying to enact statewide orders and get sheriffs to go knock on people's doors and have too many people over Thanksgiving, and now the sheriff, there's 4 counties now in California. The sheriffs are like, we're not going to break up anybody's Thanksgiving party. I guess the mayor of Los Angeles, who can always be depended on for such things, is he said he would cut power to houses where he heard there were too many people. That's Gestapo. We don't need that in this country.
Was it New Jersey or some kind of, where was it that where they were saying they were encouraging people to call a tip line to rat out the neighbors or something like that?
Yeah.
This is
snitches get stitches, baby.
Yeah, well, you're
especially
right.
New Jersey. You end up in the bottom of a lake.
I was talking to Spencer about this yesterday. I said, this seems to be just, more crazy talk from the liberals, but it's like, what are we looking at? Are they going to be trying to put cameras into the street lights or doing something so they can monitor everything? And, Spencer said it because he spent some time in California, when he was younger, and he says, yeah, but if you're in the LA area, he says the gangs always shoot out the street lights, so that wouldn't work at all. They want those things dark for their activity, but it's just nuts.
Yeah,
it is absolutely nuts. All right, we're down to 2 minutes. What you got?
What did I have? What was left on the list?
Lots of stuff.
Lots of stuff was on the Joe Burrow. So I didn't want to say something about that. Joe Burrow, rookie quarterback for the Cincinnati Bengals, tore his ACL and MCL, about as serious a knee injury as you can have. Won't play anymore this year, or won't play in 2021. I have not yet seen the video of the play. I am told he was sacked by Chase Young. Now, they played together at Ohio State before Burrow left and went to LSU. Chase Young was the number 2 pick in the draft. Burrow was the number 1 pick. And the coach of Washington was asked, would he have taken Burrow if he had been available at number 2? And he said, heck yeah, which, Burrow, that's a franchise quarterback, right? Who no one would say no to that.
Right.
So, but Chase Young took offense, hey, I'd rather have him than me. And so, he put some hard hits on Burrow before that. So I don't know if he was involved in the play where he got hurt or not. But I do know that, like, he was alarmed. They were saying on the radio, he was alarmed and helped, tried to help him all he could and so forth. So, things like that happen. And now, there's a really smart, promising, effective quarterback is down for a year and a half.
Yeah, I mean, I was reading too that the statistics with Burrow is, I mean, at the pace he was going at, he would have set all kinds of rookie records for a quarterback. Yeah. The Bengals are a terrible team, but he is. I think he is a franchise quarterback. I mean, the Redskins need a franchise quarterback. Interesting game too, in the sense that playing against Alex Smith, a guy who I never thought I'd ever see on the football field again after his gruesome injury. I mean, in Washington, the Redskins, and I'm not going to call them that, the WFB, the Redskins have had, they've unfortunately had, some history with quarterbacks with some gruesome injuries. Go back to Joe Theismann. There've been, there's been some weird thing with Washington where you want some of the almost career-ending injuries. Go to Washington. That'll do too. I don't know what it is about that. It's just kind of a weird bad juju over.
If you're in college, go to University of Maryland.
Yeah.
That's been you're talking about bloody quarterbacks.
Yeah, that's a whole nother story. Thank you for that's a my alma mater. But and we were talking as we get to the end here. We're talking at the beginning of the show with Thanksgiving. We do have a lot to be thankful for. With all this, even with all this stuff going on politically and whatnot, it is. You kind of put that aside and really think about it. You've taken your family down for more family and to be able to get together with them there in Louisiana, which is fabulous. My kids are they're out, and my wife had a chance to visit a couple of them this past week when she did her crazy cross-country drive to move cars around and things like that. And we're thankful for that. I mean, we're definitely thankful for our children where they are and for what they're doing and trying to be responsible adults and things that they are doing. But yeah, I think time to be thankful for our family, our wives, the great mothers that they are, our your mom, my late parents, or your late dad, for all that they did in raising us, to be who we are. And also this wonderful country, right?
Yeah.
We live in a great country. I say this at the end of every show, and people have got to remember this, that, you could just put aside your political divisions, have really think about what you're thankful for, today, tomorrow, the rest of this week. You really should be thankful every day, but we tend to kind of lose focus, I think, along that line. But
yeah, one thing that's just flashed in is Diego Maradona, one of the greatest soccer players ever, has died, just 60 years old.
How about that?
So
yeah. So, but and unfortunately, COVID has changed, how Thanksgiving is going to be for a lot of families, smaller gatherings in a lot of places, and some people that aren't here with us as a result of COVID-related, deaths and things like that. So anyway, thank you everyone for joining us. Please, as always, stay safe and stay well. And as I've just said, remember, we live in the greatest country in the world. Do not let anyone ever tell you otherwise. And really be thankful. Think about what you're thankful for today, tomorrow, and the rest of this week, the rest of this month, the rest of this year. We do tend to kind of lose sight of those things, and we have so much to be thankful for. So thank you once again for joining me today, Brian, remotely. And God bless America. We will see you next week.
Happy Thanksgiving.
Happy Thanksgiving. Yes.